Hey there, everybody. I'm Mike DeLisio.
And I'm Camilla.
Today, we're going to be taking a look at Wroth. This is coming from publisher Chip Theory Games, designer and artist Manny Tremblay. And in Wroth, you are playing as one of several different asymmetric factions in a post-apocalyptic, I think, type of a setting. Would you call it post-apocalyptic, Camilla?
Man, is it post-apocalyptic? It's just kind of reminiscent of like Badlands or Radlands or any of those kind of alternate reality. Yeah, maybe post-apocalyptic, but I don't know, wild. I'd say it's wild.
We'll go with wild. Well, Camilla's actually going to show us how this wild game plays, so let's take a look at that, and then we'll come back here and let you know what we think.
Wroth can be played either competitive or cooperatively. In this overview, I am only going to show the competitive version. So this is going to be a game in which we are controlling individual factions, moving them around the map here, vying for area majority in order to get the most points. The game end is going to be triggered when somebody gets 30 points here, as indicated on the mat in this different color. Once that happens, we'll finish out the round, finish all the scoring, and the highest points will win. It's going to be played over a number of phases each round. So to start each round, you'll just do a little maintenance. You're going to pip up the round counter here. So in this case, we would go to 4. And then you will also pass the first player token. After that, we're going to go through each of the different areas in order here, so they each have a number in the corner of the area. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then into the middle with 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're going to go through each one and take care of any spoils. So you'll notice in each area they do have one of these little tokens, which is going to show at least some victory points. So for example, here in 7, this one is worth 1 victory point. We're not going to worry about that during this phase. We're just looking for something that has a second symbol in it. So for example, here, this in the middle one has this deployment symbol here. So if you had majority in that area, you would get to take that bonus action. So for example, over here in area 1, I do have majority, so I would earn 1 Cora. Now Cora is going to be kind of the currency of the game, and it's going to be used for some different actions and deployment later on, which we'll get to. So we'd go through each of the areas here and take any of these spoils when you have majority. So this one here, the green player, for example, would get this deployment symbol as well. After we take care of the spoils, we're going to go into the groundwork, which we're kind of setting up for the round. The first thing you do is you're always going to deploy 2 units from your ready zone into your deployment zone. The deployment zones are the 4 on the outside of the board, and they are all one area for adjacency purposes. So for example, this area here is adjacent to number 1 over here because these 4 zones are considered 1. But where you deploy to is just right in front of your player area. So you deploy 2 troops. You're going to go ahead and roll your ice all-seeing die here, set that aside, and then also gain 1 Cora for the round. After that, we're going to go into phases 4 and 5. These are kind of the meat and the bones of the game. In 4 is where we're going to roll the action dice and draft them one at a time, starting with the first player. We'll go through and we will draft those. And then once there is only 1 die left, you will look to see who has the fewest points. Whoever has the fewest points gets that last die. If there is a tie, then nobody gets that extra die. So in this case, green has the least points, so he's going to get 1 additional action this turn, or action die to spend. Once the drafting is done, we go into 5, where we're actually going to take these actions. Now, you have to have, in order to take an action, you have to have an action die to spend. You can always choose to use any 2 dice, including your all-seeing die, that you've not used yet, in order to take an Exodus action. An Exodus action is going to allow you to take any number of troops from one region and move them to any adjacent regions. So for example, if I did that here and use the Exodus action, I'd be able to move this guy here. Maybe I want to put 2 over here and 1 over here, or something like that. So you're able to spend 2 dice, forfeit their actual die face in order to kind of spread your troops out and do a mass push. So maybe I might do that, right here in my deployment zone, for example. Other than that, you would choose one die and take that action. This is going to be an attack action, which allows you to do 1 damage in an area. And so, for example, if I used this action here, I'd be able to use this guy to take out one of these, or perhaps I could use it to take and pip down his elite die here. So I would just take it down to a 3, for example. So this is going to allow you to do 1 damage. This is going to allow you to get a Cora. And then you really have 2 different symbols, which are going to allow you different movement through the board. You can either deploy some troops out onto the board into somewhere that you occupy, or you can go ahead and with this one, deploy 2 troops into your drop zone or move troops into an adjacent region, something like that. So you're going to spend a die and take that action back and forth. The other thing you can always do is use your all-seeing die. This is 1 bonus action that you get each turn, but it does not count as its own action, so that's in addition to a turn. So for example, this round, if I wanted to get a Cora and then also do this symbol, which is going to allow me to do a strike into 1 region. So as I would do that, I would perhaps just take this guy out over here. You don't have to have anybody in there because it's like an airstrike. The other free thing you can do on your turn is you can always use Cora in order to send out one of your elite dice. These are going to be your specialty troops, which have some ability on your player mat. So I would spend 2 in order to put a Karn and go ahead and put him out into here. Again, this is going to be kind of the meat and the bones of it, and it's going to be very asymmetric depending on your player board and the different actions that you have. After we do that and we've all taken our actions, then we're going to go into the final phase of each round, which is the victory points. So again, going through the different regions in region order, we will score the victory points if we have majority in that region. So it has to be majority. Ties lead you with no victory points. So just here, for example, I have majority here with 2, so I get 1 victory point. However, because I'm also the only faction in there, I get an additional bonus point. Moving through over here in region 4, we see that we have a tie there, so nothing would be scored. Over here, I have 3, and then the green player here has 4. They would get 1 point. They don't get that added bonus point because there are 2 different factions in there. And for 6, I would get the 2 points as well. Nothing for 7 and 8. That's going to be the final round or phase of the game. So we would start from the top again, keeping and going until somebody gets 30 points, which is going to trigger the end of the game. Like I said before, highest points will win. A couple things to notice, like I said earlier, the real strength of this game, or the meat and potatoes of the game, is going to come down to the individual player factions, as well as some additional bonus cards you have, which can either be ongoing abilities with persistent, or a once per game really powerful action. And it's just going to be about coupling that together to really maximize your turns for the area majority and earning those bonus points. But that's going to do it here for Wroth. Let's go up top and talk about what we think.
All right, so there you saw an overview of how Wroth plays, and what you might have noticed during that overview is that Wroth is a very bright color palette. It is a striking, I think, impression on the table when you see it for the first time. And utilizing much of what the publisher Chip Theory does, there's a lot of neoprene, and you've got some custom dice, and all of that creates a very arresting look on the table. What are your thoughts on just the visual appeal of this?
You know, I mean, we oftentimes talk about things taking us on a journey, and I think I went through a journey with this. I love Manny Tremblay's art. I really, really appreciate him as an artist. And so it's very striking and draws you in, but immediately I'm like, how is this going to do visually, especially when there's multiple troops on the board and you have to account for different elite dice as well, which all have their own different symbols and abilities. So while I was visually very interested in it, I was hesitant as well. I was surprised to find that as you play through the game and you become familiar with the map specifically, that goes away pretty quickly, and I do still think that it is very arresting, very I guess, draws you in with the artwork, but also doesn't get in the way. And that was my biggest concern, which melted away pretty quickly by like 1 or 2 rounds.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we'll get into it more. I do have some definite things that I like, and I've actually already mentioned I do like this kind of wild, super saturated color palette. I think it works for this game. I do have a couple of little nitpicks about, the map and things along those lines, but we'll get to that. So I guess one of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of how the structure of a round plays out, and how it's a bit of a procedural feel. Actually, it's a quite procedural feeling to the game, in my opinion, where you're doing these, I believe it's 6 steps, 6 phases for every round, and you are doing them in a very particular order. And I think that early on, it's very, very important to make sure that you are being very careful about following all of those steps, because I think it can be easy to kind of forget little things here and there. Oh yeah, did everyone get a Cora? Yeah, everyone does that. Did everyone put out their 2 basic troops? Things along those lines. Do you feel like the structure of a round is clear? Is this something that works for you?
I think it is really clear, and I think that's the biggest positive to it, is how clear it has to be, and then it is. So those player aids are fantastic, which really break it down round by round. I think, and so I will disagree just a little bit with what you said. You said especially in the beginning you have to make sure that you're going through step by step. I think it's so procedural that can never really go away, because even if you are very familiar with the game, if you're just like, all right, let's get ready, and everyone does something, everyone just kind of catches up the first 3 rounds on their own, things are still possibly going to be missed. I think that even after repeated plays, you have to be like, all right, let's go into this step. Let's go into this step, just to make sure nothing is missed. Because not only is it procedural, the order of operations and the order that things happen do matter. As you saw kind of there in the overview, there's 1 token to show the victory points, which are not scored till the end, and the spoils, which are scored in phase 2. Or not scored, I guess, but gained in phase 2. So it's 1 token that does 2 different things in 2 completely different phases, and that very much matters. And so I think that it's procedural not just in the phases, but also in the order that you go through the map, because that's going to matter. As if we take care of Area 3, that's very much possibly going to affect Area 5. And so we have to know that and make sure we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through the areas. So I do find it very procedural, yes. And I think that's probably going to be more of a player preference on if you are okay with that. I appreciated it because that brought a lot of clarity to it. And I need that procedural to make sure I'm doing everything correctly. And I think that the game did provide the player aids to make that possible.
Yeah, and I concede that point to you. You're right. It doesn't go away after the first couple of times you play it. It is something it's a part of the game. I think it's almost like a fundamental core part of the design of this game, is that because you have these interactions where the order matters, you have to kind of do it in this procedural structure. So yeah, I will concede to you there. You're right. It's something that you have to it's just a core element of the game. One of my favorite aspects of the game are the different asymmetric powers that are in these clans. It has one of those things that I love, where when I'm playing it, I always feel like every other player has a cooler power than I do, until I'm playing one of those powers, and then I'm like, well, shoot, they're playing the power I had last time so much better than I did. Now maybe that's the better power. And so I kind of want to be all of the powers every time I play the game.
Yeah, it definitely has that feeling of everyone's broken, so therefore it works kind of thing. But in that, if you look at the game, it's a very basic game as far as the actual rules. The rule book alone is only like 3-4 pages long if you take out the setup and the components, right? It's a very short rule book. It's a very simple game, until you kind of delve into that asymmetry of the factions. And that really is just so much of this game, and what brings, I don't want to say the complexity, I don't want to say the weight, but brings the personality to the game, really. And it does lead to those real jealousy moments where you're like, oh my gosh, and even further complicated by that one little card that you get, which is either going to be a crazy huge one-time ability in the game, or this like slow and steady persistent one that just feels super overpowered. So I love that feeling of overpoweredness. I do think that you have to know, again, your play style, if that's going to ring for you, because it's very much you have to understand what you can do, but you also need to understand what the other players can do, because if you don't, you're going to be caught very unaware in some of those battles. It's going to feel very punishing if you don't know what you're up against. So it's makes for a not slow, but I guess a higher learning curve as you work through the factions and start to see the asymmetry come together in the game, understanding what you can do, how does that power against other factions, how do you combat those other factions, also, what can they do? You know, I mean, there's some that, you know, if you do a damage, they're immediately going to do a damage back to you. You have to be ready for that, so you don't wipe yourself off the map too. So there is a higher learning curve with that asymmetry, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think that as in terms of asymmetric games, this falls somewhere in the middle where, you know, there are some games that are asymmetric in the sense that maybe everyone starts the same and you maybe draft things that make you different. You know, that's on the lower end of the scale. And then there are other games like, you know, maybe Root or something like that, where it is like you're playing different games almost in the same shared arena. This is somewhere in the middle where I do think it's very important that until everyone playing is familiar with all the factions, that you read out very carefully to everyone, hey, this is what my clan can do. This is the feat card that I've chosen for this game. You can't spring that on people because it just wouldn't be fair. And so I agree that that's something that has to be kind of upfront. And so if it's your first few games, there's going to be a bit more of that learning curve on the front end. Once you've played the game and a few times and you've played with the factions, each of the factions, that becomes less of an issue. But it certainly is something that is in there. And you did mention that this is not the heaviest of games. And I think that's important to point out, specifically because it's coming from Chip Theory Games, which they have a reputation, and I think a relatively deserved reputation, for games that can be somewhat complex, that can have a whole lot of like key terms. I'm talking about games like Too Many Bones and Cloud Spire and Burn Cycle, things like that. This is very much on the lower end of those types of games. So relatively simplified rule set, but there is some learning curve at the beginning to kind of get a hold of all these things. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to kind of go ahead into final thoughts. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up before that?
No, I think everything else I can wrap up my final thoughts. So yeah, we'll go.
Okay. So for me, this is a game that does a lot of things right. It has a rule set that doesn't get in its own way, which is very important because, as we've mentioned, there is a pretty heavy asymmetric feel to the game. Each of those clans absolutely do feel different from the others and allow you to have some strengths and weaknesses that the other clans don't have. It really will inform the way that you approach a particular game. And so I like that you can focus more on what your clan can do and less with any, like edge cases and minutia in rules. There's not a lot of that here, so I appreciate that. I happen to really like the look, the visual appeal, the art, and the aesthetic. I think is really gorgeous. I think it's going to be divisive because it's very stylized, but I love it. So a lot of things I like. The only kind of downsides to me are, one is that I know you mentioned that the map kind of goes away after the first couple of rounds, kind of the nuances and kind of the oddities of the map. I somewhat agree, but it makes it so that the first teach is usually really tough because people have had a really rough time wrapping their heads around the idea of like the outer region where it has the deployment zones and it's part of the map, but kind of not in some ways. And I just wish they had kind of did that a little bit more elegantly. So that's one little nitpick I have. And the other is some of the iconography I don't love. I think it is very easy to confuse the extend action from the deploy action. I wish that maybe it's an issue of iconography. I'm not sure what it is, but it seems like that is a very easily confused differentiation between those two actions. So I kind of wish they had come up with a better solution for that. But those are relatively small points in a game that I find to be a very positive experience, something that is unique and stands apart. So I'm going to be giving Wroth a 7.5 out of 10. I think that without those nitpicks, it could have gotten close to, to that 8.5. It's something that I absolutely recommend. I do think you kind of want to know what you're getting into when you start it, but I absolutely really think that this is a unique product out there on the market, and so 7.5 for me.
Nice. Well, I'm right there with you at a 7.5 as well, and you pretty much hit everything that I was going to talk about there. I do think there is more game than the box size belies, and that is something that we're missing in this hobby. A lot of times we'll play a game and it's like, oh, that was so fun, that's so epic, and then you see the box and you're like, whew, well, that box is also epic. This is a tiny, I guess, comparative to the gameplay and the depth of the gameplay, a tiny box, really. And I think that is really missing in this realm of area control as well. When you're looking at the dudes on the map, the area majority, I'm sorry, I said area control, this area majority style game that can play in 60 minutes. I had the same concerns about the map. I think that it visually could have just been a little bit different had they just included the map a little bit bigger so that you actually see the ocean all around. It's like, oh, it's ocean all around. That's why those are included. I don't know why, but something simple like that would have just clarified that adjacency kind of rule that I've not found a really good way to explain yet. I also think that chip theory has a high production value. In this case, though, where all the asymmetry on the player mats and that text really matters, it's a little bit small. So sometimes you always can see it, but I'm sorry, but if you're already struggling trying to figure out what it means and then to have to read the board as well, sometimes gets in its own way. But overall, this is a game style that I don't really find myself enjoying, this area majority, but I love the asymmetry in this because I feel like it's what I'm going to kind of deem here positive asymmetry. It's all about what you can do and how exciting that is. And so it's not, you can do this, but with this cost. There's no negative. You just feel powerful. It's just a positive experience, kind of unleashing that faction and really learning what they can do, and then also learning what others can do and how you can harness your strengths against them. I really love that power dynamic that you feel when you're playing this game. So I'm a 7.5 as well. Couple little, production things that I think would have been, or artwork and graphic design that I wish would have been cleaned up. But overall, I do enjoy this, and I think within the realm of the style of game, this is a really good choice. So 7.5 for me.
All right, well, there you have it. Great minds think alike. That's what I'm going to say. Great minds think alike. So there you have it. That is Wroth, 7.5 from both of us. And until next time, I'm Mike DeLisio.
And I'm Camilla.
And we're going to say it's post-apocalyptic because we're not sure.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.